Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It is me, your favorite professional nerd, Jagger. With me, as always, is our wonderful Dynasty captain, Jeff Bell. And as promised, we have Alfredo Brown back. And I know our schedule is wonky, folks. It is the holidays. And we work hard to provide you with the best info possible. And we are tired, but we love you. And we are here talking about 9 off-season sells. We're going to start with a spicy one. I believe this is yours, Jeff. Jordan Love. Tell us why he is your biggest sell.
Yeah, he's my big sell because where I see him being valued, it's really selling on his youth or banking on his youth is where he's valued at, because the production really hasn't been there. And if you look at, obviously he was hurt early in the year, but if you go from week 8 onwards, he right now is quarterback 29 in points per game. And what really has happened with the Packers early in the season, they kind of let it fly a little bit. And we saw last year that wide open offense that he came in his first year starting and kind of surprised all of us. But then it seemed like early this year, there was still some of those concerns from him as a rookie, where the interceptions, those types of things, and they got ultra conservative with him, with this offensive approach, leaning on Josh Jacobs, making Jacobs the centerpiece of the offense. And I'm really curious going forward, what do we have? Because we know right now they've gotten by without having that key number 1 wide receiver that has frustrated us all in fantasy, but their plan, they were fine with it. Now they're not getting that production out of really anybody. They're not getting the high-end production out of Jordan Love. And again, at 14.6 points per game since week 8, the second half of the season, quarterback 29, what are you buying in Dynasty to buy him as a top 10 quarterback option in Dynasty? You're really banking on bounce back. And right now it feels like he could go either way.
Yeah, no notes from me, really. Alfredo, you got anything?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, the only thing I might say is that I'm just not buying Jordan Love, but I'll hold him. I'm not necessarily pushing to sell. So that's really the only thing there, man. Like the Packers, they still have a good youthful core around them, and I think, Jeff, like that's what you're saying. It's not just Jordan Love; it's the Packers themselves. That people are investing in that age group, and that they have such a bright future. It just means that there are a lot more factors into this offense that are going to have to be successful. Just when we thought that we'd see a healthy Christian Watson, we still didn't get. We got a healthy Christian Watson, just not a productive one. So I think we've kind of seen what the ceiling is for Jordan Love. So that's like the mystery's gone. The cat's out of the bag. We know what he is now.
And it's to me, I think the production can raise up a little bit if they improve their offensive line. That's a big thing. We definitely know now. We get it, guys. You don't have a wide receiver 1. This committee is not working. You need a guy that you can rely on. But really, the big thing for me is where he's ranked. He doesn't run the ball, guys. Like, why are we putting him above Drake May? Why are we putting him above Caleb Williams? Why are we putting him above Bo Nix even at this point? So it is a math equation for me. So with it right there, guys, I know the Packers fans are going to come after us, and it's nothing to do with him as a football player, but it's just what scores us fantasy points. Before we go any further, we got to pay some bills. Like, subscribe, do all the things that you've ever been told to do on YouTube. It really helps us out. It keeps food in Jeff's kids' bellies. It keeps my cat happy. That Pokemon shirt, how else would he afford that without your likes and subscribes? And if you are on the audio side, Spotify, Apple, the best thing you can do to help us out is leave us a review and tell us your favorite Pokemon. I just want to know. You get nothing but my love for Pokemon. And go to footballguys.com/plans today and sign up, because we have rookie content coming up. Alfredo, you have a spicy one. He's been the new hotness. Let us have it.
Well, that's why you sell Jerry Jeudy, because he is the new hotness. It's not like we haven't had a big enough sample size where we're saying, I really wonder what Jerry Jeudy is. Like, dude's been playing in the NFL since he was like 16. He was a rookie in 2020. I mean, people have gone in and out of college by the time he finally broke out. And now it's a breakout with Jameis Winston. How many times have we done this before? We see a wide receiver have a big year with Jameis Winston and we think they're going to keep doing it, and they don't Like Jameis is he's good for fantasy football. That's what we've seen. Also, the amount of injuries and the trades and things that have gone on. You get David Njoku injured for a couple of games there. You got Amari Cooper traded away. You have the Browns that don't have a running game whatsoever. Jerry Jeudy was really all that was left, and he kind of became this beneficiary of circumstance there in Cleveland. And I think there are a lot of people that have been sitting on their Jerry Jeudy stocks for a long time or have held on to the notion that he is a top flight wide receiver. Don't get me wrong, he's not bad. He's not a bad player at all. The tape was always great watching Jerry Jeudy come out of college, but we've also had a big enough sample size to know that he's probably not going to be a top 24 fantasy wide receiver year in and year out. This was a circumstance. And right now, Jagger, looking at keep trade cut, he's back at his absolute highest fantasy dynasty value, that he's been at in, over a year, really. We're seeing that uptick on the Jerry Jeudy value. And honestly, I just want to sell. I want to sell before it drops back down, before we find out what's happening with the Browns in the offseason, because they're locked into Deshaun Watson. Jerry Jeudy, I don't want to be caught holding the bag with him.
Yeah, you said the magic word for me. It's not even anything about Jerry Jeudy, the player. He is a Brown. I don't want it. Jeff, you got anything?
They're locked into Watson's money. I don't know that they're locked into Watson ever being on the field again. And I think that a couple of months ago, we kind of had them as a playoff team in the back of our mind from last year. And we thought that, well, what's going to happen? They're going to pick the 9th pick or something like that. Right now, I project them to end up with the 2nd pick of the draft. And they could be walking out with Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I hear you. I think that it is a really good time to sell Jerry Jeudy, given that uncertainty. I'm really curious what ends up going forward, though.
Yeah, the draft is a big mystery for them because I hate any player that I send there that isn't an offensive lineman or a defensive player, because I'm like, I am shadow realming you at this point. But it makes sense. They have the resources. I know a lot of people think that maybe no one trades up for any of these quarterbacks, even with the Patriots having the number 1 overall pick. Who knows? They have the resources to get someone better than I think Deshaun Watson or what they have right now. Well, I think Shedeur Sanders is there. Another thing to go back to Jerry Jeudy, though, Ted McMillan, it could be sitting right there. And I don't think that Elijah Moore is going to be the wide receiver too. He's not the prince that was promised from the Jets as we thought. So that's something else that could really depreciate his value. So like Alfredo said, it's buy low, sell high, guys. This is what we do here. It's a stock market. So I get it. We should sell the Gerald Judimus, his full government name. No, I'm just kidding. Chiefs fans, I'm back. Isiah Pacheco, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing with Isiah Pacheco? Especially if you plugged him into your playoffs. I know he got injured one game, but even before then, he's been there. They keep giving Kareem Hunt snaps. They keep giving anyone who can catch a pass snaps, because we've tried to tell you that he's not been a strong pass catcher. And the only thing that has been holding up his value has been the fact that he's attached to Patrick Mahomes. So now we see the Chiefs, who got Xavier Worthy working now. Noah Gray seems to be the heir apparent. I don't know, but the Chiefs, mostly with a strong defense, are in a position to have a luxury running back. It's a copycat league. We've seen what Josh Jacobs has done with the worst team. We saw what Saquon Barkley could do this week, which is break the rushing record that's been held for a long time. So really, I think the Chiefs should upgrade at running back, and he's not been very good even when he's been out there. So how are we holding up his value this long? Jeff, we'll go to you. You've been pretty on the nose here with this Chiefs backfield.
Yeah, it's surprising to see, but it really does seem, I know the injury is there, but it seems like Kareem Hunt has just been flat better than Isiah Pacheco, and who would have seen that coming? Pacheco's entering a contract year in 2025. Right now, I don't see how the Chiefs can feel comfortable giving him any sort of meaningful money, and then also probably not walking out of this draft without somebody significant in this backfield, the way that we've seen this year play, and players like Omari and Hampton, or, we saw last night Ashton Jeudy, if he's there with the Chiefs. We're seeing, you look around, we saw Derrick Henry, we see Saquon Barkley, the Josh Jacobs, we just mentioned that, the impact that these elite teams are having on these elite backs. Adding a player like that into the Chiefs offense would bring them up a level.
What else do the Chiefs need? They've got Patrick Mahomes. They've got Taylor Swift. They have the power of the Swifties. Just like they could draft a running back first round. Like if Ashton Genty, let's say he falls to the 31st or 32nd pick. I'm smashing the draft button. Granted, you have like an envelope and a whole process, but if theoretically, I imagine they click sleeper and they say yes. Yeah, I don't get it, guys. I think now's the time more than ever, especially if you've had those leagues turn over at this point. You've had those payouts where you are selling to someone who needs a running back, and if you get a second rounder and someone feels like they're getting a discount, you're probably coming out on top. Alfredo, are you a Chiefs hater too? Are you part of the club?
I wouldn't say I'm a hater. I think I'm just trying to be as pragmatic as possible about Isiah Pacheco. I think he's a solid running back, and he has done exactly what the Chiefs need. He's great for real football. Fantasy, there's always going to be that limitation. Where we get excited is for him to have touchdown upside. And with him coming off of a tough injury, we're not going to see a whole heck. I mean, we've already seen what we can this year, but next year, like Jeff said, it's the contract year. Maybe we get a good year off of him then. But if you're going to wait for that, you're running the risk, like you guys said, of them going into the draft and coming out with someone that can play with Pacheco because they've seen what Kareem Hunt can do. And I don't see him getting a big time second contract. And by the time he does that, he's going to be 27. I don't want to hold on to a running back like that. So I'm all aboard selling Isiah Pacheco right now.
Easy peasy. Now you're breaking my heart, Alfredo. I'm going to kick it back to you with your next sell. My baby boy's finally getting these touches, and I guess now's the time to release him into the wild.
I mean, that's exactly it, Jack. The people like you, sorry, that have been sitting here going, "Oh my God, please feed Zach Charbonnet, feed Zach Charbonnet." Y'all, like these guys are just going to keep eating at each other. Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, like the idea that I've heard some people, and especially my own co-host Dave Kluge, say Ken Walker should be the secondary guy that gives him the explosive plays, and Zach Charbonnet should be the main guy that they're giving the heavy workload to. Yeah, no, like they're just going to keep splitting this thing up, guys. Like this is what we have seen over and over and over, and we've seen when both of them are healthy. The team typically wants to give as many touches to Ken Walker as possible. He is a guy that can handle the load, and Zach Charbonnet is seeing his highest dynasty value since he was drafted to the Seahawks right now. And this is another one of those where I'm going to take the peak before it valleys again on his dynasty value. There's a lot of people holding out hope that he takes over the running back room there. I would not be surprised if there are people, not saying that I would do this, but I would not be surprised if there's people giving up late firsts, early seconds for Zach Charbonnet when, I mean, really, I think right now he's a fancy handcuff. Like that's what we're at right now with Zach Charbonnet. Maybe a flex on most weeks, but I don't want to have to plug him into my lineup and worry, is he only going to get 4 touches this week and give me 3 fantasy points? That to me, like that is not a player that should be having the same dynasty value that I'm seeing right now on sites and in trades.
Alfredo just said he's the Le'Veon Bell of A.J. Dillon's. You hate to hear it. Jeff, you've had the theory that Ken Walker could be traded. That could happen, and like I think it should happen. Like I think you're pretty much spot on a lot of this roster building. Like to the last point on Pacheco, I didn't even know it was a contract year for him because 7th rounders, we're not really talking about contracts for them. Even with that, it's almost, especially with running backs coming in and the value that could fall in this draft class, would you take a second for Zach Charbonnet right now, or are you holding?
So I traded Zach Charbonnet. I mentioned it on the last show. I traded him in a package. I got back Jalen Waddle in that type of a package. A straight up second is actually, I did do that deal in our Dynasty Listener League. I got a second and a third that should project to be high, hopefully next year, to a contender. So, yeah, I mean, I thought a second was offered to me, and I thought that was slightly light relative to seeing the rest of the season for Charbonnet, but a second and a third on top of it, I was happy to make that deal.
Just looking at Keep Trade Cut for some references, people that are around him, some players, Khalil Shakir right after him. I'll take Khalil Shakir. Even if Keon Coleman's kind of came on. I don't know how real that is. I didn't get a chance to look at that game. Jeff, I'll let you answer that one. Chris Godwin is around there. George Kittle isn't that much more expensive, but when you get, that's like a whole tier above there. You probably have to pay up. Brian Robinson is up there. You could tier up too. So.
Yeah, Coleman he's decent. He had an injury that he's been working through. He did score a touchdown last week. I think the biggest thing with Charbonnet, what we've seen, their dedication to one back. And when he's been healthy, it's been Ken Walker. This has not been a situation where you can play both of these players in any given week or their flex consideration, those types of things. This has been, one of these players has been the bell cow and the other player has been just a situational backup at best.
Oh, we got one more player here that I feel like Jeff and Alfredo talked. Are like, let's upset Jagger. Let's kill everything he loves in life, and let's say that it sucks. You got another one of my special ones there, Jeff. Who are you selling?
DeAndre Swift, selling
Ah,
DeAndre Swift, and to me, a lot of it comes out of he's arguably had his best year ever, and that's saying you look at his scrimmage yards, best scrimmage yards ever. We've seen the touchdown vultures. His touchdowns haven't quite got there, but he was touchdown vultured last year in his only healthy year by Jalen Hurts, and so in many ways, it's been his best year. He had a really great run in, I think it was around between like week 3 and week 8, around that area, like a 4-week run where he was a top 5 fantasy running back. Outside of that, he's been well outside of RB2 status for the majority of the season. And right now, I know he's signed to a decent deal. They made it a decent investment there. I think we're going to be bringing in a new coaching staff, so we don't know where that's going to land. We don't know what the future is going to look like with backfield usage. I personally don't believe that Roschon Johnson has shown enough to believe that he is going to be the complement or another back there. If I'm the Bears, depending on where I feel my draft needs are in this deep running back class, I'm probably looking at adding a running back to that backfield or looking at free agency and adding another back. And again, the coaching staff is up in the air. There's a lot of unknown variables. I mean, if it is Ben Johnson that they go with, Ben Johnson was there and already got rid of DeAndre Swift in Detroit. So we've seen that once. So what could the future be there? I just think you've had the best year that you're going to get probably from DeAndre Swift, or at least best situation you're going to get from DeAndre Swift. And what did we get out of it? A running back 2 we didn't feel comfortable putting in lineups.
or you had to if your name's Jagger May. Alfredo, why do you hate DeAndre Swift?
One, Jag, I want to say this. You are the person that I'd love to trade with. Absolutely love, because you have your guys and you're like, you know what? I believe in them regardless of what everyone else says. Like, I would love to give you a trade package of here's Zach Charbonnet and DeAndre Swift, and let's see what you're going to give me back, because that would just be phenomenal.
See,
And
you think I'd get got though? I love
oh,
them.
no,
and
no,
I
no,
want
no.
them to
I know you're
succeed, but
smart.
I'm not a sucker.
I know you're smart. I know you're smart. I know you're not a sucker like that.
But you're
But
right.
I mean, but you're kind of right. But you're kind of right. I mean, it's so funny. I'm not like a Bitcoin bro where I'm watching the charts and stuff like that. But it's funny when you look at the stock dynasty value of DeAndre Swift, and it's every year when he has that 4-game span where he goes off and he's the running back 1 overall for about 4 weeks. We're like, finally, it's here. And then his dynasty value, he pumps up about 10 spots in the running back rankings, and we all go, oh, he's DeAndre Swift. And then it just goes like right back down. And so it's crazy to see him that in one season he can go from RB 19 all the way down to running back 49, and then like right back up to running back 21. And you just can see this consistent downtrend of his career, honestly, and the way we value him in fantasy and dynasty. And we're just not going to get it. Like, we're not going to get the guy that has the crazy volume. Even with Caleb, he's not exactly a guy that passes to the running back a ton. I think he's probably been schemed up to do that because it's DeAndre Swift. But like Jeff said, I think the Bears are probably going to be looking another way at running back this year and probably trying to focus more on getting that deep passing game going with whoever their new offensive coordinator is.
Ben Johnson's gonna come in and bring Deuce Staley to haunt him.
Oh my
like,
God, yeah. They'll cut him day one.
Yeah,
Or
Deuce
worse,
Staley-
they'll keep him and just demote him to practice squad.
Yeah. Like he's gonna pull like the surprise. He's gonna come in the DeAndre Swift, see the Vietnam helicopters. It's like, no, Daddy, no.
He's definitely one of those players that somebody in your league loves more than anybody else in your league loves. There is a Jagger, there is a DeAndre Swift knock in every single league, and it's usually the person that has him, which makes it a difficult trade.
Bring me your poor. Bring me your needy. Like, I was like, I look at these rosters with the DJ Moores, the DeAndre Swifts. Everyone said, don't do it, Jagger. Don't go into the light. And then look at me.
Jag,
Eating
all of these
Regretti
guys,
spaghetti.
Jerry Jeudy, Zach Charbonnet, DeAndre Swift, these guys are fetch. We keep trying to make it happen, hoping that they're going to break out. It's just not going to happen.
To make you guys feel better, I have given up on Kyle Pitts, but that's a story for another day.
He's also fetch.
Also fetch. Mine is Dalton Kincaid. I feel like he's fetch right now. He is way too close to George Kittle on keep trade cut right now. What do I need to do to turn Dalton Kincaid into George Kittle? And I'll do it. Jeff, I'm not going to say much to you. It's just it's been production. It's not been there for what we have ranked him, and the amount of snaps that he is getting and the opportunities. So I don't understand it. You are the Bills fan. Is it time to, I'm not saying give up, but like you really need to fade him a little bit at this point, right?
I mean, you do. The frustrating thing is when you dig into targets, those types of things, raw targets have been there. It's been there. It's just not, you're not getting it. It seems like every game you'll get 6 to 7 targets. You'll get 3 to 4 receptions. You'll get 32 yards, and that's about it. And that's just not the, especially when you compare him to, you're just not going to get like the Brock Bowers or Trey McBride volume, I believe, relative to the way that the Bills have been running their offense. I think that coming into the season, that's where our hope landed on them using that first round pick last year and seeing the potential growth there, seeing him potentially step forward as their number one receiving option. Their offense just isn't built that way. And Josh Allen, he's ascended to a new level of football where he doesn't need a number one wide receiver because he's playing so well and they're just able to spread the ball out. They're involving any given week. You have 9 different players that are getting meaningful targets in this offense. You got Mac Hollins is being used. You got these random receivers coming in. It's just not going to be a situation where, relative to look at what the way Arizona runs their offense or the Raiders run their offense, and Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are almost everything there. You're just never going to be there.
Yeah. It's hard for me to justify it. Alfredo, you a secret truther of Dalton Kincaid?
He burned me as big as any player in fantasy this year. I was all aboard the Dalton Kincaid train because if there was a year for him to do it, it was this year. When it was, okay, well, we're bringing in Keon Coleman and our top receivers, Khalil Shakir. As much as I love my baby boy, Khalil Shakir, like this was the year. If Dalton Kincaid was going to be a new Mark Andrews, right, or a Travis Kelce, this was the time.
Yep.
And it didn't happen. And if it's not happening now, I remember Heath Cummings told me the biggest thing that was such an indicator from him analytically was not seeing a great yards after catch for Dalton Kincaid. And I kind of hand waved it away. I'm like, that's just rookie year, small sample size. We'll see how that goes. There should be enough targets for him to really change things. And touchdown variance can go the other way. And none of that stuff truly helped him. Like, this is still a guy who, as much as I liked the film and I liked him coming out of Utah, he's still a little bit limited athletically, and there's just something with this offense where he's not going to be getting the targets we want.
He's Mike Gesicki is what I feel like, because he's not a strong blocker. And like you said, but with the yak is a huge deal. You guys have watched us now. You understand mine and Jeff's scouting process. A lot of you read the big board on there, and a lot what goes into our grade for tight ends is yak, because I mean it is the stickiest stat of what makes them productive, because you got to think that tight ends don't always get the volume as receivers, so when they do get a target, they need to make the most out of it. So a lot of times we get burned by these players. I'm happy you guys don't think I am crazy. The next one we have, Alfredo, you really know how to pick him. This is another one where he's a phoenix from the ashes. He's not a Jagger special. I actually didn't believe he was real for like weeks. Go ahead and give us yours.
I mean, a lot of these feel kind of obvious because I feel like they are at the pinnacle of their value, and it's Darnell Mooney. And we're seeing his best value since his second year in the league right now, dynasty wide, one of his best seasons. And there's so much hype around the Falcons. Actually, now that Kirk Cousins is no longer the starter, there's some Penix riding going on in Atlanta. And I figured you'd like that one. I wrote it down on a 3x5 card. I was like, I can't wait to bust that joke out. But yeah, I mean, like Darnell Mooney, do we really see him as the long-term answer there in Atlanta? Do we really know that Michael Penix is going to be the guy in Atlanta that's going to boost the values of all of these offensive weapons? I mean, we can look at it best case scenario with Drake London, with Bijan Robinson, and sure, let's talk about Kyle Pitts again. Darnell Mooney is essentially going to be looking at third, sometimes even fourth in line for targets in an offense that is going to be going through some growing pains with Michael Penix getting his full season next year. So I don't really want to be caught holding the bag once again. I mean, Darnell Mooney, he's 27 years old right now. Going into next season, he'll be 28. Like, I don't really want to hold on to a guy that's had 2 good seasons. He's 28 years old, and this is his highest value. let's get them off my team. A lot of these guys, they're just kind of roster cloggers at this point. The Charbonnets, the Judys, the Moonies, like I want to move them for picks, or I want to package them together to upgrade at a position.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense to me. Because like I said, I believe it was a Sunday Morning Live where I was like, why are we starting Darnell Mooney? And then like Jeff's like look at his target share. And I'm like, what? Like, how is
It's
this
crazy.
even happening? Yeah.
Big year, man.
Yeah. Jeff, are you on the bandwagon here? Are you? I mean, it is like the game to sell high, and is he sticky at this point? I don't know. You know.
I mean, I don't think it's been sticky the second half of the season. He had picked up that Achilles injury around week 9 or 10, and since then we haven't really gotten what we were getting earlier in the year. And last episode we talked about the anchoring that happens in fantasy football, and I think that seeing him at wide receiver 45 relative to some of these other players around him feels like a lot of anchoring from early in the season when Kirk Cousins was playing good football and he was breaking out a little bit. And after the injury, I mean, I see him ranked right above Juwan Jennings. And to me, I'd personally rather have Juwan Jennings than Darnell Mooney right now.
Jeff, you mentioned that back half of the season. Since week 11, Darnell Mooney is the wide receiver 70.
Right.
I want that off my team. I want that off my
Darnell
team.
Mooney.
Yeah, he's Darnell Mooney.
And that's a great way to look at it. And that's a great call out here, Alfredo. And you've got a 27-year-old that over half the season, he's wide receiver 70, and you're going to rank him at wide receiver 45 in Dynasty. Anytime you get these older players, these 27, 28, 29-year-olds, that their Dynasty value exceeds what their actual redraft production is, those are screaming sells. That is, get out of that situation because they'll plummet. And I think once people plug back in a little bit and adjust, you'll see Mooney's going to drop probably to wide receiver 65 range.
Yep. Yeah, it's like Jeff said, this is a screaming sell. And if there are people who are Darnell Mooney bros, and I'm sure some people feel like he helped you get to where you're at, it's time to release him to the wild, meaning your league mates roster, to blow them up. Jeff, you have like the Michael Jordan of maybe this year's his year. Let's give us your guy.
Yeah, it was his this year. I mean, it was Terry McLaurin's year. And I think that you're looking at an opportunity now, 29-year-old wide receiver 24 in Dynasty rankings. That, to me, is a screaming sell. When you've finally gotten that great year that you've been hoping for, you're seeing Jaden Daniels come on. All the excitement is there. But at 29 years old, the Commanders have been looking for a wide receiver 2 all year long. And now going into this draft season and this free agency season, I think they're going to sign somebody meaningful or use meaningful draft capital on a player to solidify that wide receiver 2 spot. What are you dealing with moving forward? And the biggest thing on Dynasty is they get a Luther Burden or somebody like that, or somebody that's sitting on the end of the first round. How's the reaction going to be on that? And it's going to be less the actual production and more the perceived production. And we always do that. We're buying the next exciting thing and throwing out the last old thing. I think that you can get ahead of the market if you move McLaurin right now.
Yep. The interesting, I'd guess, tier of wide receivers, it's incredibly gross where you have, like, say, if you're doing a startup right now, after you have Zay Flowers, and this is to keep trade cut, Chris Olave, I love him. I probably should give up on him someday. DK Metcalf, this is where it gets weird. Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin. I like J-Mo. Jaden Reed, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill. That's a whole trap zone right there of wide receivers. It's I don't know. I guess you could roster them for the right price, but a lot of these guys here are people's wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 1s, and you're really going into the season counting on them to be significant contributors, and I think that is a mistake. Alfredo, are you out on Terry McLaurin? Especially being the redraft guy, like his value next year. I mean, you think it's like the same? I mean, he's getting old too. People forget he was an old prospect.
I haven't been out on Terry McLaurin, the player. I've been out on Terry McLaurin, the fantasy asset, for so long, just because we've seen it's just the same song on repeat every single year for the Commanders. And I get it. We had a really fun year with Jaden Daniels, but you know what offenses and teams love to do is after their rookie quarterback has a big year, let's go get him some more weapons. And that's typically what they do here. They were able to survive with an old man at tight end with Zach Ertz and another old man at running back with Austin Eckler, but would not surprise me. And like, guys, they're running out Noah Brown a bunch of times this year. They're going to go into this offseason saying, let's get as many good weapons around Jaden Daniels as possible so that we don't get the sophomore slump, so that he doesn't have to be running around constantly, so that his top target is not a 30-year-old that's had his best season in years. His dynasty value is at its highest that it's been in since 2022. I want off that train immediately. And Jag, you mentioned some of these, like on Keep Trade Cut, the value adjacent receivers. Jameson Williams being 2 spots lower than him at wide receiver 27. I'm doing that deal 12 out of 10 times. Every single time I'm taking JMO over Terry McLaurin.
Yep. Please forgive me, Lions fans. I like Jameson Williams now. I make funny jokes sometimes. Let it go. I think he's great. Because like you said, I look at there, like that's the diamond. Like that should be at the top right here after Flowers or near Flowers. You look at their production, what's the really difference in the end of the day? You know, they're just different kinds of players. Chris Olave is a big buy for me this offseason. It's probably a mistake. I don't know. I don't sound very confident.
Sorry, that's just really funny because that's exactly how I look at it. I'm like, yeah, I'll probably go and trade for some Chris Olave. Probably stupid, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
Yeah, it's like that. That is a good banana peel to step on.
That was me over and over, ironically, with Jameson Williams, and I feel so good about it now. But man, for like 2 years, I felt like the biggest idiot just doing it over and over and over.
Alfredo's a rich man now.
Yeah.
And speaking of another one that I feel like, especially if you're a film bro, especially if you're a Devy guy, anyone that people really liked, our last wide receiver here, I'm going to sound crazy, it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba. This has nothing to do, again, with the player here, his youth, or the production of the future. I'm just kind of out on the Seahawks right now. They just don't look good. Their offensive line is a disaster. Geno Smith's fine, and really, for where he's ranked at, I would rather have other people in his area. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the same value as Caleb Williams, same value as Marvin Harrison Jr. He is ahead of AJ Brown right now. I think we've done our work, guys. We realize that JSN matters, but I think that's a little too pricey at this point. I don't know, man. Maybe I am galaxy braiding this because we've waited and we thought that he could be this type of player, but the Seahawks have what got me worried. We'll start with you, Alfredo. Am I crazy for wanting to sell him at this point?
I don't think so. I think a lot of this is, I don't want to say holding on to priors, but I think there's a justification, a validation, a vindication, whatever word you want to use, that people look for. And I liked Jaxon Smith-Njigba a lot coming out of college, and he got a lot of that, well, he's only the wide receiver 1 in his class because it's a bad class. But then you got a lot of people that have held on to that for years saying, well, he was the wide receiver 1 in his rookie class and a top pick. And look at him now. He's successful. He's young. And a lot of that gets baked into his value. But Jag, the big thing that you said here is, we don't know what we're going to get out of the Seahawks over the next couple of years. They've got a defensive-minded head coach. I mean, sure, it's been fun to see that they're bringing this Washington Huskies offense to the Seattle Seahawks offense, and they're throwing the ball downfield a bit more. Tyler Lockett kind of aged out as expected. DK Metcalf had himself a down year. JSN probably is the wide receiver 1 in Seattle for the foreseeable future, but I talk about this all the time in redrafts. Being the wide receiver 1 for your specific team does not equate to being the wide receiver 1 on a good offense as well. And that's going to be the big thing is, what version of Geno Smith are we getting? What version of the Seattle Seahawks offense are we getting going forward? His dynasty. We're not looking at the 1-year window. I think, man, wide receiver 9 right now for JSN. I think that's probably about as good as it gets. There's some really good touchdown variants and some good target volume this year. I just can't imagine it getting much higher than that.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's more about where his value is and not that he's like a bad player. Jeff, where are you at on JSN?
Buying. I mean, I like him. I think he's really good. I think that he
said in his Ohio State sweater.
That's right.
Sorry,
I think he's the next version of Amon-Ra St. Brown, to be honest with you. I think that when you look at his game, he's exactly what NFL offenses build their passing attacks around. His ability to, I think he's really blossomed this year. Seeing that he can attack deep, that was big. Basically making Tyler Lockett not even a part of the offense, I think was huge, and really taking that wide receiver 1 role from DK Metcalf. I think that was significant to me. And so if I can get him, I mean, you talk about wide receiver 9, but then since he really kind of broke out, he's been a top 5 redraft wide receiver. And so if you're talking about a 22-year-old that's a top 5 redraft wide receiver, that, and I talk about, Amon-Ra St. Brown, since week 8, he's scored the exact same amount of points as Amon-Ra St. Brown in a per game basis. So that's where I'm basically, you can buy a discount on Amon-Ra St. Brown potentially for a player that profiles very, very similarly there. I understand your concerns about the Seahawks, particularly long term. I think that as Ryan Grubb gets a little bit more comfortable, as that offense grows, you're just going to see Smith-Njigba be that focal point and what they need in order to make that offense work.
So, Jeff, you would rather have JSN over Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Depends scoring structure, probably. I think in full 1 point PPR, yes. But I think that depending on how it breaks down, it's all right there. This is a blob of things that Jeff would enjoy having versus
I was about to say, I love that Jagger is baking in the Ohio State kitchen here, and then he's like, "Here you go, Jeff, a platter."
2 Ohio State Buckeyes. No, but in the Ohio Stateness has nothing to do with liking Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Yeah. It's the profile of a player that what you're getting production wise. But again, these are the types of players that I hoard in Dynasty, that I just don't move off of in Dynasty, and I try to buy more of them. And basically these types of wide receivers, you can throw them all into a big pot and you're happy with the results there.
Yep. It's like you're right, Jeff, but like I'm trying to deal with my own biases here, because like Alfredo, as you mentioned,
biases, let him go.
Yeah, you mentioned my special boys here. I was like, I can get Garrett Wilson for JSN right now. Sign me up, buddy. Give me another jet. So maybe I need to like reevaluate my own therapy here. I will say Ladd McConkey, they're the same player kind of, but
JSN and Ladd?
Yeah.
No.
You think Ladd's better? I'm not.
I think JSN is better
than Ladd.
I think Ladd's very good. I think we've seen exactly what he is in an offense that had no one else to throw to. I think that offense probably continues to add more weapons. I think Ladd's very good. I will strongly lean JSN between the two of them.
I'm going to bring Alfredo back to argue that point another time. We're on a time crunch. Otherwise, I got to put a pin in that one. That's like, I should have moved that spiciness up so we bumped the Terry McLaurin talk.
That's called a teaser. That's a teaser, baby. That's for the next
episode.
Episode.
That's a teaser. I was like, that's a hot take right there, guys. Well, that'll do it. We gave you 9 players that you should sell. And again, guys, you should take this as you're acquiring value. Not that we're saying that a player is bad or whatever. And you always need to think about the future and not just what they gave you today. As always, I'm Jagger May. I host this show. I no longer host the Sunday morning live show, not because I don't love you guys, because we are no longer doing that, because you did all the work. It's over. We're no longer going to have the trade show. We will have we're going to talk about 5 wide receivers. Us 3 guys here, we're going to do a little nerdy sicko stuff and scout one of our favorite wide receivers like Luther Burden. Just a little teaser there. Alfredo, you're going to have the redraft show up here pretty soon. You guys are on hiatus. We'll try to bring you and Dave back. Jeff is doing stuff. Jeff's here. He's everywhere. He's the busiest man at football, guys. Again, I'm Jagger May. That's Alfredo Brown. That's Jeff Bell. We love you, and we'll see you on the next one.